What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Pit Limiter Podcast. It is episode number 11. I'm your host, Zach Buchanan. Joining me, as always, John Poole III, a.k.a. JP3. What's up, buddy?
Not too much, Zach. What's going on?
Well, I ended up in a cornfield this weekend, so that was pretty cool. In a kart race, so, that's fun.
Nice.
Keep it interesting,
Well, did you get any corn, at least?
No. Nothing's been planted yet, considering in the middle of nowhere, Ohio, it's been an absolute monsoon in the last 6 weeks, I'd say. So that's pretty cool, not going to lie. It's been a pretty interesting recent week in the motorsports world. And to kick the show off, let's jump right into Stop and Go. What you got, John?
So, as we all remember, F1 Liberty was looking into bringing F1 into downtown Miami with a racetrack around the Oracle Arena in that area. Well, it looks like after some pushback from lawmakers, they have scrapped the downtown Miami race, and they are now looking for an alternative track around Hard Rock Stadium, which is used currently by the Miami Dolphins.
So Oriole Servia was a part of a test at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway last week with SPM Racing and obviously with the IndyCar series, and it was announced that Oriole will be driving the number 77 car for SPM in the Indy 500 this year.
There's some pretty shocking news coming from Mexico. The government is actually seeking to bring NASCAR to host some races in Mexico over the next few years. The Secretary of Tourism of Mexico announced that the government of Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, apologies for butchering that name, is exploring the possibility of bringing several NASCAR races to Mexico.
So Joe Graff Jr., who is raced in the ARCA series, joins Richard Childress Racing to be a part of their marketing department, and as well is going to race in the number 21 car in the Xfinity series this year.
So some more IndyCar OEM news. Porsche was showing interest in joining IndyCar. They were in advanced talks beyond the preliminary stages, but they don't have a deal signed yet. As you all know, they were in kart in the early 90s, but it looks like after some more research, it seems they are not necessarily too fond of the current IndyCar formula and prefer a hybrid esque rules package.
So Valtteri Bottas won a pretty calm Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton finished second, and on the bottom step of the podium was Sebastian Vettel. It was the first time a team has finished 1-2 in the first 4 races.
So craziness ensued at the Paris E-Prix for Formula E this weekend. Their first race in the rain, and the first race that I know of where they've ran with hail. After all of the ensuing chaos, Robert Fringe wins the Paris E-Prix. Again, butchered his name, apologies. But that leaves 8 winners from 8 races and from 7 different teams in the series.
Incredible. Well, as all of you probably know if you're motorsports fans, NASCAR was at Talladega this past weekend. The Xfinity Series, the Cup Series, as well as the ARCA Series was all there. Todd Gilliland won a pretty uneventful ARCA race on Friday. Tyler Reddick, with a damaged race car, comes back to win the Xfinity race on Saturday and Sunday. Probably the best race of the weekend, even though I didn't get to see much of it. Chase Elliott held off his teammate Alex Bowman to win the Monster Energy Cup race on Sunday at Talladega after Kyle Larson went for a scary ride on the backstretch of the final lap. All drivers got out of the cars okay. Chevy had its first 1-2-3 finish in the Cup Series since Homestead of 2016.
Just incredible. It's been that long. News today about the Gen 7 car. This is coming from our good buddy Adam Stern. NASCAR teams are actually asking the sanctioning body and tracks to help foot the bill for the major expense of switching to the Gen 7 car, which signals that teams are necessarily still not happy with how revenue is distributed throughout the sport.
So it's kind of interesting. We don't really talk about drag racing that much on the PLP, but something that's been kind of in the news, an article by thedrive.com, James Gilboy. Banned drag racing champion Larry Dixon is now suing the NHRA over a lifetime ban from the sport that he says was motivated by a desire to monopolize the business of selling experience rides in a two-seater top fuel dragster.
There's some news coming from the WeatherTech Sports Car Series. Ryan Hunter-Reay is set to return to IMSA action, driving alongside Jonathan Bomarito in the 55 Mazda DPI at Mid-Ohio.
Wow, so that's a lot of stuff going on in the motorsports world, and we've got a very special guest tonight. Joining us on the PLP for the first time, he is a freelance contributor to the racingexperts.com as well as digital content producer at the Hockey News. 22-year-old Stephen Ellis. What's going on, buddy?
Not much. How about you guys?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Now, I also kind of forgot to mention you're Canadian. Being a motorsports fan from Canada, I mean, kind of give me the background to where your love for motorsports came from.
Yeah. So my dad, he was a fan. He loved watching racing, and I guess apparently I'd been watching racing since I was about 1 week old. And I want to say Pocono would have been the first race that I would have been able to see. And one day my dad went to a NASCAR race, brought me home a big banner of Tony Stewart, and I kind of think I was hooked after that. And I ended up go-kart racing myself and raced for a while, and I've just kind of kept following the sport. Even though I cover hockey, I think I could say I love racing even more. I just there's something about it that just I've never lost interest, even in an area where racing's kind of forgotten about, especially IndyCar.
So I guess a good question to ask is if the opportunity presented itself to have a full-time career as a journalist revolved around motorsports, is that something that you would consider, or do you think hockey is where it's at right now for you?
It would be very hard for me to want to leave hockey. I absolutely love covering hockey, watching games, stuff like that. You know, racing's kind of just what I like about it is I can watch it as a fan and enjoy it. But I think I could never leave hockey. It's the thing that's I've been surrounded by it forever, and I absolutely love what I'm doing now with the Hockey News. So I could never see myself changing. But if the opportunity was right down the road, who knows? But I will be working with a couple Pinty series teams this year, so at least there's that to keep me in the sport and on the working side of motorsports. So, but I don't think I could ever leave hockey. It's just that's what I'm good at. That's what I like to do, and that's what I hope to continue doing.
So something John's actually going to head up this week. Tuesday trivia. Steven, we're going to get you involved in this as well. All right, John, knock us out. What do you got, buddy?
Alrighty. So, during the 1997 ARCA season, ARCA ran at 3 dirt tracks. What were the 3 dirt tracks they ran at during that season?
What season was this again?
1997.
97. Is DuQuoin one of them?
DuQuoin is one of them.
Okay. Gosh. I mean, are they tracks that are kind of obvious?
Oh, Springfield?
That's another one.
Okay.
That's 2 out of your 3. I will say that the last one has only hosted very obscure.
Okay.
Only hosted 1 race in the ARCA series. Actually, it's its only major late acclaim.
You know what? I think I remember reading about it. Was it West Virginia?
It was West Virginia. Good
I was
job,
reading something
Steven.
about that a few days ago because I saw a video, I guess, of the track. I'm like, where is this? And it's like, oh, ARCA race there. What the heck? And I want to say it was... Jeez, I want to say that Frank Kimmel won the race.
Yes, he did by a lap over Blaze Alexander.
All right,
I'm pretty sure that 1997, that would have been one of the years where Mark Thompson actually pulled off a win, right?
I believe
Ooh.
so.
Let's fire up the Google machine because I'm actually.
Yes, he won Charlotte.
Jeez.
They had 2 races at Charlotte that year.
To be fair, though, I mean, we could guess a winner of a race back that far, and we could probably guess Frank Kimmel, and we'd probably be right most of the time.
But here's a really interesting thing, though. They went to Charlotte 3 times that year. They did.
What?
Yeah, they went to Charlotte in May twice, within 4 days of one another. They held a 100-miler on, say, the Saturday of the All-Star race, and then the Wednesday before the Coke 600, they ran another race, a 200-miler.
That's interesting.
Well, I was looking at it yesterday, but there was like one of the I think it was the Busch North series that raced at like Oxford like 6 times in one season.
Jeez.
I can't remember the specific details, but it was like it was Busch North racing at one track way too many times.
I remember vaguely the Xfinity series used to do that with Martinsville. They used to run 3 times a year.
3 times, yeah.
Used to be the season finale.
Well, see,
that's right.
Grand Am used to race at
Daytona twice.
Daytona 3 times.
3 times. Oh,
3
yeah.
times, really?
Yeah, they started the year, mid-season, and end of the year.
How long ago was this?
This would have been like 2002.
Well,
like, it was
gotcha.
short-lived.
Well, the mid-season one was the Paul Revere 250.
Which I always enjoyed that race. But
I remember that one.
Yeah, there was the 2002 Grand Am series, I guess. I want to say, because I think they did specifically that season because it was like I guess they had a couple of DPs actually entered the race, but they were not full-time teams at that point. Yeah, Daytona 2002, yeah, they raced there 3 separate times. So there is that. And if I am correct, they did have a couple of DP cars, but like they weren't allowed to like race their points.
Oh,
and this would have been 2002 would have been before the DP era.
Yeah.
So was it 2004?
3.
3 was the first year.
They all broke down. It was not a pleasant.
It was mayhem. But like, the schedule was kind of fun back then. Like Daytona 3 times, Homestead, Fontana, Phoenix, Watkins Glen twice, VIR, and Mount Tremblant. So they actually didn't really have much variety. But like again, I really like the idea of racing at Rovals, and I think there's a lot of Rovals that are just kind of ignored. Like Phoenix, I think is a good one. Fontana's a very fast one, but the GT cars always got way too spread out. New Hampshire, I just want some series. I don't care who. Someone please race there. That's such a weird track. It's like the only Roval where they go outside of the track.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is that New Hampshire used to be Briar, and that was part of Briar. I have a better idea. Just tear down New Hampshire and rebuild Briar. Make everybody happy.
Don't say that too loud. That's why I might hear it. Might not be too happy about hearing that. But I'm sure that wouldn't be the first time that they'd hear something like that. I think it was really interesting when Grand Am used to run, I mean, like you said, Phoenix. I'm trying to think. They also ran Iowa at one point.
We don't talk about that one. that was bad.
That was like basically an oval, but
Mark Martin ran that race, remember?
Oh, that's right. Didn't he start from the back or something?
Yes.
Because I don't think he qualified.
Yeah, something like that. It was just so many questions. Who thought I don't know, that it's like adding a Roval at Martinsville. It just
Hey, why not?
There's not enough room.
Gosh, there's so many. I mean, I'm trying to think of other Rovals we've had. I mean, I guess you could count Indy GP layout, but that's...
Remember the really terrible Charlotte Roval from...
World Challenge.
It was like World Challenge. Jimmy Johnson was supposed to run one of those races, 2004, I believe. It was just No.
It was 07.
Yeah, it was '07.
Yes.
And they had the tire barriers as a
It's
as a
tractor tires as a chicane.
as a chicane. Yeah, that was I like the new iteration of the Roval.
Well, did they even go into the infield at all?
I want to say yes, they did.
Because if I remember correctly, I want to say they just like turned in and then at pit road they turned back out or something. Like it was not a very elaborate roval, if I remember correctly. And then let's see, Grand M also ran Kansas.
Oh, jeez. Did you guys ever hear about the 2014 race they did at Kansas, which would have been the second year?
No, didn't hear about that.
They what they did was, well, I thought you and I were talking about it, maybe not, but they basically they didn't have it was prototype challenge when they had like well before like yeah when they had that as a class, and they had the prototype like what became the prototype challenge cars, which were the Cooper Tire prototype lights cars, which was basically the support class for LMP3 up until this season, and they raced those two classes together. And it was two 45-minute races, and they didn't broadcast it or anything, so there's no proof of it happening on YouTube or anything. But it was I want to say there was like 15 cars total between the two classes. But it's like, yeah, it was like the Dying Prototype Challenge, and then what later became Prototype Challenge in its own different thing. But they raced each other, which was very strange.
That's interesting. Huh. Well, the more you know, I guess. So the Talladega, which I think in some people's minds it's either their favorite race on the schedule or their least favorite race, and it's usually, I don't think it's too far in between, because plate racing, it seems like people either love it or they hate it. And I think what we saw Sunday, I didn't see much of it because I was at the kart track all day, but from what I saw and from what other people were talking about, it seemed like they actually got the package right, and it was a pretty good race.
I'm not sure. I can't speak for you, Steven, if you got to see it or not, but I was really intrigued by practices and such like that this week of how this package would act. And of course, Friday they were going way too fast, so they decided let's add the gurney lip to the spoiler and slow them down a little bit. And quite honestly, that was probably the best super speedway race since probably 2012. In all honesty, it was
absolutely that was a lot of fun.
And people will say, "Well, they got single file again." I'm like, "Well, I was just saying to myself, well, if you listen to the radio, they were doing that to save fuel." So it seemed like they could not go single file. It just wasn't possible with that package.
So sometimes there's a point in time in a race, especially in the middle of a race of a plate track, where you're just like, all right, we all got to chill out, get in line, and not kill each other, and they're saving fuel. And I think if you run the whole race 3x3x3, you're just going to risk junking the whole pack. I mean, look at all I think every plate race last year and a few in 2017. Just look at all those. You run 3 and sometimes 4 wide the whole race and have no time to catch your breath or regroup or anything like that. You're going to have big wrecks, and you're going to have 10, 15, 20 cars finishing the race. And I think that was a good balance, and it was a pretty good race. Chase Elliott won, Bowman second. I had a lot of different guys mixing it up for the lead and everything, so it was pretty neat to see.
And I'll let my bias hit here. I'm a Chevrolet fan, motorsports wise.
Really? Never knew that.
Yeah, never knew that, of course. But huge Chevrolet fan, motorsports wise. And it was nice to see Chevrolets run up front. It's no secret that since the update with, I'd say, Toyota a few years back, that Chevrolets have really lost their edge. And now Ford with the new Mustang, they just have something that the Chevrolets don't have at this point. I'm not sure if it's something underbody or the body shape itself. I don't know. But it was really nice that, they actually contended and got, I think, 6 out of the top 10 spots. I know that the director of General Motors, sat them down, I believe, on Friday and said, we got to work together. Because they were sick of seeing, Toyotas or Fords win all these plate tracks or just win in general. So it was a pleasant change, I'd say.
Yeah, like that was, for the most part, it was a pretty competitive race, and there truly was no real favorites, and it was nice to see kind of the Chevrolets kind of rise to the occasion for once, because it has been such a Ford dominance over the last couple of years at the plate tracks, and to see the Chevys kind of strike gold there and finally have a good run was nice to see a bit more parity, because again, like when you look at last year Talladega for the fall race, it was all Stewart Haas racing. Well, they weren't able to do that this year, especially when Harvick got involved in an accident, and that kind of really hurt their opportunities there to do what they did last year. So it was kind of like you never knew never knew what to expect. But the one guy who is a Ford that I've actually thought has done a good job this season, but has had no luck, was Michael McDowell. He's a guy that, if you look, he spends a lot of time actually running in the top 15, and whether it be involved in an accident, something wrong in the pits, whatever, he seems to always find a way to kind of fall out of there. But like yesterday, he was running top 5, top 10 before he was involved in that accident. He's a guy that I was really shocked to find out he's actually like 30th in points, and the only guy with less points in a full-time ride this year happens to be his teammate Matt Tifft. But I was really surprised, because I thought in a lot of cases he was running quite well, but in a car that doesn't really contend often. But he was giving that team opportunities to have good finishes, only to get involved in accidents, and it was kind of disappointing to see that like happen once again for him yesterday.
I completely agree. I've never really thought of McDowell and such like that throughout the year, but yeah, he has had some truly nasty luck over this year. Just whether it be tire failures, wrecks, mechanical gremlins, you name it, he's had it this season. And if you look, I mean, he had a top 5 in the 500 this year. So he has the talent. It's there. It's just he just has no luck.
So on one side of things, you've got McDowell having the bad luck, but how about... Okay, so Alex Bowman gets a second. Ryan Preece gets a third. I believe that's his career best.
Yes, both are career best, actually.
Yes. Daniel Hemrick, 5th.
Career best.
Brendan Gaughan, 8th place. I believe that's a premium car. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, it's Beard Motorsports.
Beard Motorsports, okay. And I think he ran for premium at one point, but Beard Motorsports, 8th place finish. Corey LaJoy, Go Fast Motorsports, 11th. Reed Sorensen finishes in the top 20. Like these are a lot of great stories. So it's bringing some parity back into plate racing, and it's kind of neat to see, honestly.
And one thing we didn't mention is Ty Dillon won a stage.
Oh, yeah.
He's, coming into the season, if you would have told me he's won 2 stages, I wouldn't have believed you.
I would have said you're crazy.
I would have said the same thing to myself, but think of it this way too. He now has more stage wins than Jimmy Johnson has.
Yeah,
that's
right.
That's a crazy stat to say, but
wait, are we talking this year or are we talking career?
Career.
Really?
Yes, really.
So the stages were introduced in 2017, correct?
Yes.
He didn't win any stages in 2017?
He either won or none.
Gosh. That's crazy to think. Well, that's really sad though. It kind of says how far off the map Hendrick and Chevrolet has fallen.
Well, no, not necessarily, because Jimmy Johnson was always more of a guy who turned it on late in the race.
That's true, yeah.
So.
But stage racing, there's points for grabs in the stages. Every point does matter. I mean, even though you got the playoff format, points do matter in the playoffs, and if you win a stage, you get playoff points, and it's or you don't get playoff points for stage wins. I'm dumb, but
Yeah, you do.
oh, you get one, don't you?
Yeah, but you still get points.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. See, it's their format's so confusing sometimes. It's hard to remember what's going on half the time.
Remember, they made this format to make it easier, quote unquote, for people.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I kind of wonder if having that many points up for grabs every race kind of dilutes the purpose of it. Because if you have that many points, like think about it this way. So instead of scoring 40 or 43, how many ever points a race, you're now scoring 60 times. Even if we're just doing the regular season races times 26, that's a lot of that's a big difference in points. The more points you offer, the easier it's going to be for the field to be spread out. Which basically, it's going to be easier for one guy to point his way in over another because it's just not going to be close.
Yeah, exactly. To me, it doesn't really make sense that on any given weekend, I could say, "Oh yeah, second place earned more points than the winner."
Yeah.
Take for example, this is Bristol. Joey Logano, who finished third, had the same amount of points as Kyle Busch, who won the race.
Yeah.
I remember last season, Chase Elliott, who finished 7th or 8th at Sonoma, had more points than Martin Truex, the winner.
Yeah. I think the only other series that I know of that you could score more points than the winner is IROC because of their bonus points system. They paid out bonus points for like if you scored the most, if you led the most laps, then led the second most laps, then the third most laps. So like it was multiple tiers, I guess you could say, for how they distributed bonus points. But yeah, to think that we're giving out more points to third place than what we are the winner is kind of crazy to think about.
Okay, here's another example for you. Atlanta this season, Keselowski scored no stage points. Second, third, and fourth. And let's see here, 12th scored more points than he did.
That's a little scary.
Yeah, Kyle Larson in 12th scored 44 points.
Kyle Larson hasn't really been lighting the world on fire recently either.
Oh, don't get me started.
Yeah, it's been really rough with him.
I don't know if I necessarily blame him completely. Because, I mean, when's the last time that Ganassi has had two strong cars? I mean, when it was McMurray and Larson was the A driver, or, he was the fastest usually. McMurray was usually consistently top 15-ish.
It would have been like 2014 or 15-ish, whenever the team itself was doing great as a whole.
Yeah. But, I mean, Kurt Busch, I got to give him props. He's come in and has run really well for them, I think. But Larson, man, I don't know if it's just Chevy or if that 42 team, but they need to get it together because they haven't won a race since 2017 Michigan. Is that right? No, Richmond.
Yeah, Richmond.
They won 4 races that year, I believe.
Well, a lot of people like to... I kind of see it as a trifecta of sorts. One, the package does not suit his style. I mean, I hate to say it, the cars are not on the edge. 2, Chevrolet has a deficiency. That's given. 3, I don't think Chad Johnston is the right crew chief for him.
No.
Bingo.
I don't think he's really the right crew chief for anybody, to be fair. I mean, when if I remember correctly, it was 2014 or 15. It was the 2015 Brickyard 400. Stewart was running second or third to Harvick, but had contested throughout the race. Or maybe, was it 14 or 15? I can't remember. I just remember that Stewart was a big part of being in the top 5 and had a shot at potentially contesting for the win. And Chad Johnston's like, nope, bringing it down pit road, getting 4 tires with like 20 some to go or something. I don't even remember, but it was not nearly enough time to come back and win the race. Being on a hard
Yeah.
tire and being at Indy, restarting 20 something or whatever he did, you know, I just, yeah, he's not the right crew chief for Larson, I don't think.
Yeah, I was mentioning that to John yesterday. It's like I I follow Tony Stewart again, like I was saying earlier. To see that was painful because that was in the midst of his really tough time where he wasn't doing much, and all of a sudden for him to have a chance at Indianapolis and was thrown away by what easily at the time seemed like a stupid pit call and ended up becoming a stupid pit call. We saw the result of it, and all of a sudden Tony Stewart does to win that race and isn't in it at the end. And I really do want to know why did he pull Kyle Larson off the track yesterday to have him pit at the end of the race, go from being just outside the top 5 to he's at the back of the pack making no moves that eventually flips over. If he's not in that situation, if they don't pit him late in that race yesterday.
Now, you brought up a good point about Larson's flip. Now, in the past, NASCAR has been known to kind of be knee-jerky when it comes to any type of flip or this or that with the package when it comes to restrictor plates. Do you think they'll make a move to correct, say, a crash similar to what Larson had yesterday?
I don't, because to be honest, I don't know if NASCAR fully knows exactly how that happened, because are some theories about it, but in reality, there's been a long time since we've seen a car flip in that way, but at the same time, like that was just a strange flip altogether. It also was the first race of that package at that type of track, so we don't totally know what the whole cause is. But at the same time, that was a strange crash for him. I don't think NASCAR will react really quickly or reactionary to it. I totally don't know. But again, NASCAR has made some questionable decisions on the fly in the past, so you never know. But again, that was just a strange little flip that I was wondering if the damage to his hood was part of the reason, and that kind of got him in the air.
Yeah.
The way he flipped, you don't see that. Like, since they got rid of the grass in the back stretch and the front stretch, you don't see the cars flip like that. That was almost like an old style flip with grass there, and there wasn't that. So
well, it was very similar if we look back at it. The spring race in 2016,
yeah,
with Matt Kenseth, where a direct hit straight to the side or to the wheel. I mean, in Kenseth's case, the wheel was ripped off, so the air lifted up. It looked like with this crash, it crushed, some crush panels, rocker arm, maybe possibly the side skirt, and it just, lowered the takeoff speed because air got underneath of it. But we also saw William Byron, if he would have just got the right hit to the side of his car, he would have been over like McMurray was last season in practice. So we could have had 2 really nasty tumbles there if circumstances worked out.
The way that wreck almost looked as if a car pushed him up and over, but there was no car there. Like, remember Allmendinger's wreck in the fall of 2010 when he got pushed, or like Clint Boyer in the duels 2014. Like, when you get pushed and the air gets underneath it and just flips you over. If you look at it in slow-mo, the right rear starts picking up first, and it looks very bizarre just how he's just sliding along and the right rear picks up, and he's not really even sliding backwards. He's just kind of sliding sideways, but the nose is in front of the car. It's with the nose first, and to see the right rear pick up, it's very bizarre to see that. To me, the only thing I can think of is whatever they're doing with the underbodies of these cars. I mean, I can't think of anything else that would cause that. And just the rumblings that you hear about what these teams are doing to the underbodies and what they've been doing to the underbodies for years now it's kind of suspicious, I think. I guess if we could find out what caused that.
Yeah, definitely so. I'm curious, just as a general fan. I, what causes this? We have all these inventions of roof flaps, cow flaps. Now we're talking with possibly a newer package, say for the All Star with a hood flap. We're still having cars getting upside down. Now, as a NASCAR fan, I'll say that as long as nobody gets hurt, it's great for entertainment wise. But for the drivers, they don't want to see that or have that happen. So, what can we do to stop this, per se?
Yeah. Well, and that was a scary wreck to see, honestly, because if he would have taken off a little bit sooner or even a little bit later, you could argue, if the timing's differently, he could have easily launched straight head on into the catch fence. If maybe a little bit more height on it, think of it that way. If he launches head on into the catch fence from basically, getting clipped at full speed, sent to the infield, and launched head on into a catch fence. I hate to speculate what could happen in an accident like that, but there's no way it could be a good outcome from having a car launched like that into a catch fence. And it's scary to think about, honestly.
Yeah, and one thing that we saw a few fan videos of the crash. I never realized how close the fans were to the backstretch wall. So if he hits a catch fence, what is that going to do debris wise? That's what I'm concerned about. I never realized they were that close per se. I thought they were, close, but not, like a stone's throw away from the track.
Well, that's not even the first time that we've had cars hit the backstretch wall like that. I mean, Kenseth did it 2016. He hit the wall upside down.
McMurray did it last season in practice. So it's
a common trend that we've begun to see, and it's yeah, I don't know. I don't know how else you explain how something like that happens or how you prevent something like that from happening.
I will say the good news is, though, at least it's happening somewhere where there aren't a lot of fans. Like, it's not happening where a lot of fans could get hurt.
That's true.
I will say that.
That's true.
But that begs the question, race cars don't choose when they want to wreck or flip over.
And they'll find the weirdest places to crash. Like 1994 Mark Martin. Remember when he went through, I think, 2 guardrails and a fence? Yeah,
almost went into a spectator area. He said he should have. He was actually talking about that this week on his Twitter. He said, I should have died.
Yeah, I saw that. Very, racing, you see the most bizarre accidents. And, yeah. The one thing that I will say is, the one thing that I noticed about this crash, it almost kind of reminded me of 2017 Daytona July when Larson kind of did the same thing when he got turned off turn 4, and really virtually, after he got turned the first time, virtually no contact after that, and he nosed into the wall and the back end picked up off the ground almost in the same manner and then set back down on the ground after hitting the wall.
Yeah, I always found that wreck to be probably one of the weirder ones that I've saw at Daytona or Talladega.
See, and even Austin Dillon 2015. Now, I don't know if that has anything to do with underbody just because of how... Voice crack. Just because of how it happened. You could argue he ramped off of Hamlin's nose. You could... I don't know, but... The only thing that I can point to is the Gen 6 has had some very weird wrecks on plate tracks.
I'll completely agree with you. It's really weird types of wrecks. I mean, what's your opinion on this, Steven? Would you agree that the Gen 6 on plate tracks have been, really weird when it comes to the accident side?
Yeah, because we don't see as many crazy flips as we had in the previous eras, but I don't know, it just seems like every crash that we see now Daytona Talladega, it's like wow, okay, that was big. When you look at that Di Benedetto Buscher crash yesterday, that was a pretty high impact crash that like it just I don't remember seeing a whole lot of that in the COT era. But yeah, it does feel like we're seeing a lot higher, stronger, um, uh, more dangerous accidents with the Gen 6 car. And I'm no engineer. I could not tell you why that is. But at least from a fan's perspective, it definitely looks like, yeah, the crashes have been quite significant. Again, we don't see a whole lot of flips these days. And when we do, it's like they're almost strange ones, like Kurt Busch's when he ran for Furniture Row a couple years ago, and just some flips that just don't make a whole lot of sense. But at the same time, um, they're still pretty impactful, and we've seen a ton of huge accidents and a lot of big accidents to the point where, I don't think we were talking about that 15 years ago with the Gen 4 cars. So yeah, it just seems so much different now, and I don't have a good explanation for it though.
It just seems like, well, I could say partially it's probably because the cars are going a little bit faster, maybe the higher center of gravity. And I guess it's the higher center of gravity, and I guess the way the chassis is designed, I would assume it's different. I'm not entirely for certain. Again, not an engineer. That maybe the wrecks look more intense because more energy is getting dissipated. So in true reality, it's actually better, but they don't look better.
Yeah, like when, say, I think it was 2012, Eric McClure crashed at Talladega. Like, I mean, that was like head on into the wall, and he came to almost a complete stop. He ended up getting hurt in that wreck. But then you see other crashes where guys, hit the wall or flip, or and it's because that energy is dissipated as it is. Like Kyle Busch, 2015 Daytona. I know that was a very weird angle to hit a wall. The angle of the wall and the fact it was concrete and not a safer barrier. But regardless, he came to almost a complete stop after that. So I think that's one thing you also keep in mind when you think of wrecks like that.
Well, if you were doing a side-by-side comparison of the McClure wreck, Danica did the same thing in the Kenseth flip wreck. Hit the wall at a very similar angle. Now she was shaken up, but fine. Thankfully.
She's been in some crazy wrecks, man. Like the Almirola one at Kansas, when Almirola got hurt, countless plate track accidents.
Countless Daytona wrecks.
Yeah. So what Pinty's races are we going to see you at this year then, Steven? Or is that still on the drawing board?
So I will be working with a team. We haven't announced it yet, but the driver, for anyone who follows the Pinty series, is pretty much given away. The driver is returning to full-time action after 2 years away. But I'm scheduled to go to all of them. I'm not sure if I'll be at all the Quebec races. However, I'll be working with Bryce Turner, a guy that I've done stuff with at Can Race. But definitely going to be at the big ones, Most Sport. I'm going to be missing Jukasa #1, which is a big disappointment for me. That's actually the very first track I ever saw any racing at when it was Cayuga back in 2002. It was a CASCAR event. Where Tony Stewart, Matt Kenseth, Kenny Schrader, Ted Musgrave, Johnny Benson, and I think that's it. They all ran in the CASCAR series.
That's cool.
There was 44 drivers, and Matt Kenseth ended up winning the race, and Tony Stewart ended up getting a fight with
nice.
That's fitting.
With the uncle of Kaden Lapsevich. So that was a pretty funny thing. But yeah, Tony Stewart getting into a fight 2002, I'm not really shocked.
No.
But that was a pretty cool event. And I want to say he was specifically there for a whole week. But yeah, I'm going to be at pretty much most stuff. And I know there's going to be a lot of exciting stuff happening, specifically with the fact that in 2020, we're actually going to see the biggest change in Pinty's history in terms of the cars. We are expecting a new manufacturer, and it won't take a whole lot of guessing to figure out which one that would be. And we are going to see new cars, that's going to be resembling what we we see in ARCA and the K&N series. So I think we're going to see higher participation, which is nice because car counts have been an issue the last few years. And part of it, I think, is how do you convince a team to invest in a series where you don't make much money? It's a losing battle altogether, and you can't race your car anywhere else. Whereas there's the APC late model series, which has kind of gained a lot of traction in Ontario, and you can race that pretty much anywhere in the States and in other late model series. So it's a tough sell. So it's nice that they are going to go to the bodies that we see in a bunch of other series, because all of a sudden now maybe we could see some Pinty's teams attempt the ARCA Daytona race, for example. So I'm excited where the series is going. I'm excited to be going back to the races, because last year I moved away from Ontario, moved out west, and I saw a grand total of 3 races compared to the 10 I saw the year before that. But of those 3 races, 2 of them were on the same night, and the third race was like 3 days later. So it was literally a 4-day excursion, and that's all my racing season schedule last year. So excited for that. I get to go to the Toronto Indy once again, and this year will be my first time actually covering it. So that would be nice, because I've gone as a fan the last couple of times. It'll be nice to actually be there doing a lot more. My whole focus actually is more on the video, or the photo and video side. Yeah, I like racing. It's fun.
Now,
Awesome.
will you be attending, say, IMSA or the NASCAR Truck Series event at Canadian Tire?
Yes, the Truck Series. I've been doing that the last couple of years, so I will definitely be there. Cool fact: the finish between Cole Custer and John Hunter Nemechek, I was underneath the flag stand for that race, and at the crash, a bunch of debris hit me in the face and the arm, and that was a fun one. But I got one of my all-time favorite photos from that race of them two coming across the line right before they got into a fight. The IMSA race, I'm hoping to be there. That's up in the air, but the race I will be going to is there will be a sprint car race, and Rico Abreu, Tony Stewart, and Christopher Bell are all coming to Washouigan, which is kind of by Cayuga's racetrack there, and it's always a fun race when they do that. That track always brings guys like Kenny Wallace comes, Kyle Larson came in the past, and so yeah, I'm excited for that one. It's been a while since I've been on a dirt track. We don't exactly have a whole lot of dirt tracks in Canada.
I mean, that's cool. Getting to travel and get to work some races, that's awesome. I will say, though, on the whole Pinty's deal, it's awesome that they're going to have potentially, similar cars that would potentially, they'd be able to race, outside of Canada from an efficiency and a health standpoint of the series. But I will say I'm going to be sad when I see those cars go, because they just look so cool.
They look cool until you get right up close to them, and they look like they were bolted together 20 minutes before the race. But no, I will say it was nice because it was unique, and
Yeah.
And the racing, I don't know how much of it has to do with the bodies, but I will argue that the Pinty Series is one of the best levels of NASCAR, partly for the fact that we see so many close finishes, and it's a great schedule. It's a bunch of short tracks, and then a street race or 2 street races in Toronto and GP3R. If you ever get a chance to go to Trois Rivières, that was still one of the coolest events I've ever been to in my life. And I've been to some championship hockey tournaments and some other big events, but that was really cool. They basically shut down Trois Rivières for 2 weeks, 1 week for Rallycross and 2nd week for the Pinty Series. And it's these regional racers, these guys with other jobs and other things going on in their lives, basically become celebrities in these towns, and it's really cool. And it's always a fun street race, where every year there seems to be a giant fight. We actually do get a lot of fights in the Pinty Series.
Grassroots racing.
Yeah, we saw Kid and Lapsovic's team and Donald Teja's team go after each other in Victory Lane in a championship race.
Oh my
awesome.
God.
I posted some videos on my YouTube of it. It was interesting. Teja's team was not happy because Tedra's going for his first win of the year, and this is Lapsovic's final race in the series, and he bumped Tej out of the way to get the win. And as you can imagine, the 50-year-old Tej was not happy, and neither was his team. But yeah, that's it'll be fun to see that happen. And the big question this year, though, is Alex Tagliani ever actually going to win a championship? Because he's starting to get older, and He's had his opportunities, and last year looked like a really good opportunity, and he ended up losing to LP Doolin, and who they one of the big partners in that team is actually Marc-Andre Bergeron, who has played for Team Canada in hockey and played in the NHL for many years. So there's a hockey connection there too.
That's cool.
Wow. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of like a schedule guy. So, there's a lot of NASCAR fans that say, well, let's do a street race, in the top 3 series. What's the overall vibe of a street race in the Pinty series? Since here in the States we don't have that, or in the top 3 divisions we don't have a street race of sorts.
Well, the 2 most popular races of the year are GP3R and Toronto, the 2 street races. It's a total brawl on the track, and I did write a story for the racing experts about that. I would absolutely love to see a street race, but logistically it's challenging because with NASCAR you get up to 40 cars doing it, and that makes space pretty tight. You don't typically see street races with that many cars, and they at Toronto Riviera they always got a late model race with 20 to 30 cars, and that's just a gong show of guys just smashing into each other. So it would be tough to do a full cup field or even a almost full Xfinity field. I think the closest series you could do for it would be trucks, and I think that would be absolutely hilarious. It would not be the best driver that would win. It would be who did not slam into the wall 5 times who would win the race. Because if you think CTMP is nuts, try driving those things around the streets of Toronto or Belle Isle or Long Beach. That would be very tough. And the whole question is, where would you race these cars? Where would you have something like that? But the Pinty Series fans absolutely love those races. Toronto Riviera is always sold out. It's always a major event. And Toronto, having it part of the Toronto Indy, I'd argue it is the best event every single time. And the best part is the Pinty Series is willing to race in the rain. So we haven't seen a street race in the rain, but how much fun would that be? Quick answer, not that fun. Everyone would crash turn 1.
The gong show the gong would fall off.
Turn 3 at Toronto after a long straightaway is challenging enough in the dry. Now make a bunch of stock cars do that in the rain.
Concrete? On that concrete? Yeah.
Yeah, there's 15 cars in the wall, turn 1, or turn 2. I absolutely love the street racing. I think the consensus is it's fantastic. How logistical is it for putting 40 cars on the track? I don't know.
Well, and you make a great point with space, because I'm trying to think of a street race that has that many. The only thing I can think of is Macau. And that's just a big,
much lighter, so it's lighter and smaller, and so they can handle it. That's the thing. Like having that many stock cars is much more challenging. I was thinking, well, what about IMSA? Well, we just saw Long Beach have only 18 cars between 2 classes, but again, we are looking at 2 classes where the car speeds are much different. Mm-hmm. So they're able to spread out more. So that works better. You put a bunch of cup cars, well, they're not going to spread out as much, and they're not going to get the high top speeds either. And then all of a sudden, you're braking pretty early, and it would be kind of tough. And I think the best way we could describe that is try doing an iRacing race at something like Long Branch or anything like that in a Gen 6 car, and good luck. You're going to be in the wall very quickly, or you're not going to go that fast. So logistically it's tough, but you never know. I was kind of hoping, that the big 2020 scheduling thing in NASCAR, we'd see something really cool. Obviously, we didn't see any tracks added. Maybe that'll be 2021 type thing, and it would be nice to see the Truck Series consider something. But at the same time, it would be tough to be a standalone event, and I don't think the Truck Series would want to be an IndyCar support race like we see at Texas. It would want to be its own thing if they're going to race street racing, because the racing is going to be significantly different than the IndyCars there. IndyCar, it's more strategical, and you're not seeing a lot of crazy passes, but in NASCAR, it's you're going to be slamming guys into the wall to make any pass because of how big the cars are.
Well, that gives me a thought. NASCAR always says, we're trying to get into these big markets and such like that, and the only way you could really do that is bringing the race to them. Well, that's the perfect solution, is providing a street race in a big market city, say like a Chicago or a New York. Even though we have racetracks close, such like that, it might, spur up the crowd, per se.
Well, I also think that would be a good. I don't say a good, but it would be something different, like the Roval, and that was absolutely insane last year, and I think just to spice it up, I think even if the race was a joke and absolutely terrible, I think just because it's something different, I think people would like it because there's. I mean, John, I'm gonna be real with you for a second, buddy. John's probably one of the biggest antagonists of the schedule. So like there's a lot of people, and I understand where you're coming from. Obviously, there's a lot of people that are not happy with the schedule and have not been happy with the schedule just because it's been too stagnant. Everybody gets complacent because we're stuck with the same thing. So changing it up is necessary sometimes, and I think if a street race is possible, I think why not go for it?
I mean, the schedule in NASCAR has been stagnant for the last. It was stagnant 15 years ago.
Yeah.
It needed a change, and 2020 was of course a step in the right direction, in my opinion.
If you really want to spice it up, make a Miami street race happen and make it be the second race of the season.
Oh.
But you get the excitement of the Daytona 500 with the excitement of a totally who knows what's going to happen type race. And you start 2 unpredictable races to start the season.
But then you're cannibalizing your other event in Miami, in Homestead, which is right outside of Miami.
That's race 6 or 5, I believe.
And also you have, I'm not sure how comparable spans are, but you also have the Rolex, and then you have Sebring.
Yeah.
So, which is also in Florida. It's just overload.
Time-wise, yeah. If we're talking early in the season, I don't know if that would work, but maybe later in the season. Now with ISM being the finale.
Okay, start it right after the second Daytona then. I guess.
So the opener of the chase.
I guess that would be maybe do it right before Daytona. I don't know. I guess
it would be interesting regardless. I think.
Yes, I agree.
If they could make any street race work in NASCAR. It would be phenomenal, I think.
Yeah, like if you're a fan of unpredictable racing, having it not far off of Daytona wouldn't be a terrible idea because you can get back-to-back weeks or close by type events. That would be kind of like, okay, this is crazy, this is nuts, this is unpredictable, but it's fun. And I know that, you know what, NASCAR doesn't need to be the most by-the-book style racing. It doesn't need to be raw. It could be fun. It could be entertaining. It could be the WWE of racing, as long as it's entertaining. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, like it could be entertaining. It could be fun. It could be different and unique, and that's okay. Like if I want to watch super pure racing, I would say I'd rather watch IndyCar over NASCAR. But if I want to watch entertaining racing, I love Daytona. I love Talladega. I like the road courses because, again, you never know what to expect at that. And that's okay. It doesn't need to be these drawn-out 300-lap races where first place wins by 3 laps type thing. It could be fun. It could be crazy. And it doesn't have to be, again, just a predictable event. That's what makes NASCAR interesting, that Daytona and Talladega work so well. Because we're not going to go out and say Daytona and Talladega are, in terms of actual quality on-track racing, better than some other races. But in terms of actual entertainment, they're definitely up there. And, like, you can win Daytona just being lucky at the last second. But you can't win California by just riding in the back all day type thing. That's where you got to be consistent all day. Daytona, you don't have to. But that unpredictability is something you don't see at other levels of racing, and that's what kind of makes it unique, and that's okay. It's like Formula E. It could be a gimmick because it works, and it's different. If it was just another Formula single-seater open-wheel series, no one would care one bit. But it's got a gimmick that works. Those cars have a low enough horsepower where it's very exciting racing, despite not having the super high speed you would see in other open wheel series. And I think that makes that unique and fun. So the NASCAR fans that are all about tradition, and we got to have this way. Can't have the chase. Can't have all this. You know what? It's okay if it's different because it's exciting, and it can be exciting, and can get better. You just gotta open it up. That's why NASCAR taking risks, doing something like a street race would be fantastic.
As you were discussing about that, I thought of 2 other locations that probably be really good, big markets that don't necessarily have the presence of NASCAR: Pittsburgh and Washington, D.C. I mean, the nation's capital. Just imagine a race there. Imagine a 4th of July race in the streets of Washington, D.C. or around Washington, D.C.
Yeah, that would be pretty crazy.
Or Philadelphia. I mean,
yeah.
Or Vancouver.
One market that I kind of hate that hasn't been exposed really in NASCAR racing, at least in a long time, is the Pacific Northwest. I think the Truck Series raced at Portland there years ago, and since we haven't seen many races in the Pacific Northwest, and I think that's one opportunity that's being missed there.
Now, there have been talks that Portland International wants trucks back, but that's kind of murky.
Yeah. Well, I'm not gonna lie, it's been a great show. Steven, thanks a bunch for joining us, buddy. It's been great having you.
Yeah, it's been
you
great
for having me on.
So where can we find you on social media then?
The best place to follow me on Twitter. That's where I'm most active. I tweet hockey and racing. It is Stephen Ellis, THN, Stephen with a V. It's also my Instagram name, but I don't post a whole lot on there anymore. And I also have a personal website, stephenpellis.com, and I post anything I kind of feel like there. It's kind of like a mix of obscure hockey stuff, but also if I want to write an idea about why IMSA should race fighter jets instead of prototypes type thing. So anything I feel like there.
Ooh. So yeah, definitely go check that out. John Poole, where can we find you on social media?
Oh, you can find me on Twitter at JSPoolIII, and you can also find me at my gaming channel, JP3 Gaming, on YouTube, and JP3 Gaming 56 on Twitch.
Make sure you guys follow me on Twitter and Instagram at ZBCannon4. Like my karting page on Facebook at Zach Buchanan Racing, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Zach Buchanan. I post a lot of racing videos there. Make sure you guys follow the Pit Limiter podcast on Twitter at the Pit Limiter. We're on all major platforms of podcasts. So you can find us anywhere, including Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. Make sure you guys like us on Facebook at the Pit Limiter Podcast. And if you missed an episode, go back and check us out on YouTube as well. The Pit Limiter Podcast on YouTube. It's been a great show, and we'll see you guys next week on the Pit Limiter Podcast. Goodbye, everybody.